could we harken back to where Mr. Trey left off as far as where what the fever pitch, where the powder keg came from? You know, and I think as far as like specifically, like being that it was Minneapolis, like they went off first. You know what I mean? They burnt down the police station. Yeah. You know what I'm saying? And it was also the same place that, you know, Philando Castile was killed, and they knew that his murderers got off. You know, and so I think that kind of heightened it and made it just explode in a way that, you know, the rest of the other states started to respond as well. You know, but
because that was the epicenter of the problem.
Yeah, absolutely. Philando Castile, I mean, in that video of Philando, I mean, they killed him in front of his baby was in the backseat. The girl was right alongside him, and they shot him close range. Just like, I mean, again, the quality of it was like, it's a baby. You know, it's a baby there. Like, it's like
they don't care because they don't value us as humans.
Exactly. But again, if there's no penalty for taking Black life, this will go on again. And that's what my whole thing is. All this stuff, this marching, and we taking knees and stuff, it feels real good. It looks good. It feels like symbolism to me, you know? And so my whole thing is, does this become a moment or does there really some core level change happen? And that's what I'm like, you know, and core level change has to start. Like,
it's going to be because there's a whole lot of white people involved.
If there's some systemic things that are going on, you know what I'm saying? If there's some systemic things that are going on, then there has to be a systemic retribution.
If you understand? You can't. If you don't want the kid that just changed their behavior. If you really want an actual,
I gotta disagree though. I gotta disagree on one major aspect, and this is gonna sound crazy, but don't get mad at me. The one thing that I agree with Candace on, but it needs to be expounded upon. The one thing that I agree with Candace on is that as a community, even though she didn't really say this, but it's implied, as a community, we do have to do more and better for ourselves too.
Yeah.
So this idea that if real change is going to happen, it's up to white people, that's a false narrative, and we got to cut that, because it puts the burden on them. And it makes it look like they have the power to fix certain things that they don't really. It's up to us.
But they kind of, I'm sorry to cut you off, but they kind of do.
They like, I agree. They do.
Let me explain something. Let me explain something.
I agree. They do.
A part of this, I'm just saying a part of this is a part of this that's tied into the system is the socioeconomic aspects. There's so I was just reading an article. One of the reasons why a lot of these issues persist in the Black community is because of the wealth gap, socioeconomic. The system is what put all these Black people in these neighborhoods, but then within that, the wealth is way different, right? So, you know, the average white family has $170,000 income. The average Black family has $17,000, only 10% of what the white family has. So one thing that we're going to have to do moving forward is begin to address the issues that we have in our communities and begin to figure out what it takes for us to start to build more.
So I think what you're talking about is a separate issue. And that's the same issue I have with Candace, because what you're talking about we have to do for ourselves is something that doesn't fight white supremacy. Like, they do have to change. If somebody wrongs you, they have to change their behavior.
I understand that.
As the person who was wronged, don't have any onus on you. You don't have the burden of change on you because of what you did as a result of them punching you in the face.
I mean, I understand.
They have to stop punching you in the face.
Which I totally understand.
So what we have to do in our own communities is a whole nother issue that can make us live better. But the issue that we have prevailing right now is one that
you walking home from school, somebody come and punch you in the face, and first time you let them punch you in the face. Every day they get ready to bully you.
The Trey can't relate. Trey can't relate.
Well, I'm saying, is there any point where you start to try to find ways to fight back?
I personally,
if whether I try to fight back or not, They punched me in the face.
Yeah,
they're responsible for stopping punch me in the face.
I understand that. what I'm saying is, essentially what I'm saying is, we don't have to wait for that system to change. We don't have to wait for that system to fully acknowledge us. There's no reason to believe that it ever will change to some major extent.
If that system doesn't change, then the problem is not fixed, no matter what we do.
But we could,
because that is the problem.
I agree to an extent, but when you're saying it that way, it makes it seem as if the system wasn't destroying the exact same thing you're talking about building with the Black Wall Streets and all these other, the Rosewoods and
those things happen.
We've been trying to build in the context of the system on our own, and the system has been destroying our creation.
Yeah, we didn't just try to do it; we did it.
Right.
Which I totally understand.
A few times.
I totally understand. I'm completely with y'all. I believe 100% systemic racism is a real thing. I just don't think that we should stop trying to create our own either. I don't think that we should stop trying to gain access to information either. I don't think we should
anybody's saying educate
ourselves.
I don't think anybody's telling us not to like advance ourselves. I don't think anybody has that point. I think that what she was saying was that is the issue. Like the stuff that she was talking about is the actual issue that's being fought against, and none of that is the issue that's being fought against. The issue that's being fought against in America was developed as an exclusively white club. That's how the country was developed. That's the principle under which America began. It's exclusively for white people.
Right. And to take it a step further, when the Supreme Court ruled on the Dred Scott case, it literally said when the Constitution was written, it was not written for the slaves or their descendants. So you are not looked at as an American citizen.
Right.
We're not under the Constitution.
So this is why I believe that we need to redo the Constitution as a whole. I know that's probably easier said than done.
That's dangerous.
But what Brandon is saying in regards to taking care of our own, and building up our community, why I believe that is something that definitely needs to be done. There are a lot of resources so we can have the education that we need. Yes, currently there are things that we can do to educate ourselves. You may not walk away with a degree in rocket science, but guess what? You can go online right now and go to any Ivy League and do the whole coursework to be a rocket scientist for free. Those resources are there. But as they said, when the system has been destroying everything that we built, whether it was Tulsa, the police dropped a bomb on Philly in 1960, 1970? They literally dropped a bomb on American citizens, on American soil. So at some point, yes, we do need to build up our own. We need to stop letting allies and other people in until we get all of our stuff, our foundation built and us settled. Because that's how so many of our movements fall. Is because while we recognize we need allies and the help from other people, we bring other people into what we're doing way too soon.
I want to jump back in on what Brandon was talking about because again, I actually think it's the perfect time for us to start building again. If we're going to be building
exactly. We need to do it in tandem. I'm sorry to cut you off, but in tandem with protesting and fighting the system at the same time that we're doing that. Because listen, we all have different abilities. Some of us not beating the streets to protest. Some of us not writing up signs and like some of us are just doing different things. All I'm saying is we attack the system from all levels. Yeah. Protests, legislation, education system, and then we create our own. More Black-owned businesses. We stop putting so much money into a system that wasn't designed for us, and we start building our own system to put some money into. And I think that creates
all that stuff that we do. If we do it successfully, is a result of the problem, and doesn't fix the problem. What you're talking about is important, but it's a result of the problem. The reason we need to put so much energy into that, and they don't need to put so much energy into that, is because they have a head start. Right. So that is the head start is the issue. So the fact that we even have to, we have to, every one of us starts at zero. White people, as a general rule, don't start as far behind as we do financially. I don't really know too many people that got left stuff like black.
I don't think we started. I was about to say I don't think we started zero. I think we started negative.
We started in the negative. Most black people when they die, they leave debt, right?
Yeah.
And it's not because they was good for nothing. It's because this is America. And it's set up to create that situation. And it's also set up to create an opposite situation for another race. So if we go and we do our own thing like they did in Tulsa and like they did in those places, they were doing that because they had to, because the system was corrupt as a result of the problem, right? So the problem is with white supremacy. They're the ones who have to fix that. And that is the ultimate thing that we're fighting against. It's not what we're doing in our communities, although that's important.
Right.
So I think just those things need to be thought of separately.
Keep in mind that when we're talking about punching back, in that scenario where somebody punches you and you punch them back, we have to keep in mind that the person who punched you in the face is a 400-pound bodybuilder that's 7 feet tall with brass knuckles and
with
all this
100
shit.
brothers.
You know what I'm saying?
Also,
like,
700.
People are seeing this violence and they're making it seem like, oh my God, the people are out there destroying the whole country, they're burning everything down. It's like they have fucking tanks and bombs and all types of weapons and all. Anytime they decide that they want to stop that shit, it stops.
Okay. So Joaquin, I don't know what it looks like in San Diego, down there, Coronado Island, but I've been in LA for 8 years, right? I ain't never in my life gone down Ventura Boulevard in Sherman Oaks, Studio City, Hollywood Boulevard, none of that, and seeing piles of bricks neatly piled and stacked up in case you want to ride and break some stuff. I've been with 8 years, dog. I ain't never seen that.
But listen to what I'm saying, though. What I'm saying is they're letting us do. The only reason they haven't they're shooting rubber bullets instead of regular bullets is because it would look very bad to the rest of the world.
Optics.
It's all of it. The United States is so good at creating these narratives and twisting them to create a specific outcome for it to look a certain way. They're good to the point where they actually have indoctrinated their own people, the white people. The white people don't even know that they're victims of propaganda too. Stuff like black crime and Birth of a Nation and all that shit. When you have little kids watching a movie that makes black people look like monsters or whatever, and white people in Klans look like heroes, that shit gets in their bones. The same way we were talking about that should be in your RDNA from your sharecropper grandfather. Yeah. We're making Birth of a Nation. You know what I'm saying? Like they are victims of propaganda too, and they don't realize it because they're not having any negative, you know what I'm saying, outcome from it. They're winning because of that shit. I see you. The negative aspect of that propaganda is us. So when you're talking to a white person about how they have privilege, it's not going to fucking land. They're like, I don't know what the fuck you're talking about. I was poor, I had to work hard, and I had to do all this.
I don't blame them. I don't blame them for their perspective because, I had that discussion when I was in high school. This guy who was actually half Mexican, he was white and Mexican, but he looked white. He didn't look Mexican at all. He was like, "You really think there's still racism?" And this is literally over 20 years ago. And he was like, "Man, when have you experienced racism?" And I'm like,
Today.
When have I not? Like, they don't understand the black experience because they can't. Like, they've never seen it. They really haven't seen it. We can't just tell them. That's another thing about a relationship when we're having this argument. We can't just assume they should know what we're going through. They don't. They don't experience it, and they don't see it.
All right. Well, hold on. Because to be honest, they may not know what we're going through. Like they may not be able to relate to that experience, to be able to physically say, "Hey, I know what you're going through," right? But at some point, on some level, as a human being, you know how another human being should be treated because you know how you want to be treated.
You gotta understand, we're living in two different dimensions, bro. Like we're like when a black person.
These are the same people who got tired of COVID-19 and just decided it didn't exist anymore. These are the same people.
Oh yeah,
they can make decisions like that.
Come on, Joaquin.
And it's true. That is definitely true. All I'm saying is, to me, it's infuriating. Like I've been talking to a friend of mine, and I realized that they just don't get it. You know, like we'll have conversations.
But what I'm saying is, don't get mad at them. Like it's not. It shouldn't be infuriating. You just have to help them understand. Like there's no way for them to understand. And the same person who gets mad at them will be like, you have no idea what I'm going through. You have no idea. How could you sit there? You can't relate to it. Well, if they can't relate to it, it's one thing or the other. Either you got to explain it to them because they don't understand, or you can hold them accountable for knowing.
I know I get infuriated when it comes down to you're telling me, yo, I think X, Y, and Z, and I'm telling you no. Guess what? Like I was born into this. This is my experience.
Yeah, but from their perspective, you're being paranoid. Like from their perspective, they don't see the person. They don't see you in a line in front watching a bunch of white people get taken care of first. Like they don't know that happens all the time. They don't. And all the white people.
But if I tell you that, don't tell me that I'm wrong and I don't know what I'm talking about.
It doesn't matter. Let's put it in perspective. I have a post on my page right now where I'm asking Black women to tell me if they feel like Black men value. There's a bunch of women in the post saying, I do not feel like Black men value Black women. And the response from those posts is almost uniformly Black men getting on the post to try to invalidate their sentiment, saying,
that's not the way to do that.
Right.
That's not the approach.
It's just a human thing. You know what I'm saying? You have to learn empathy.
It's a profound lack of empathy. That's what I see.
You have to learn. And it's something that we're born with. I think you're born with it, right? My daughter can watch a show. She's 1 year old. She can watch on TV and see somebody get hurt and cry from it. Like innately she knows, right? But if somebody's teaching you not to empathize, after a while, you know, that shit, you have to relearn that. That's muscle memory, homie. Like,
it goes back to that programming too, because I realized like one of the situations I had recently was just a good friend of mine from church. Like we were cool, white guy. He's mixed, but he's white Mexican. We had a conversation where we literally spoke on the phone, and I was telling him about systemic racism. I was telling him about redlining. I talked a range of issues. And he was like, wow, that's so amazing, man. I never knew that it was like that. And it really didn't even hit me until just now, us in the conversation. I was giving him information. So now he has knowledge, but what he doesn't have is an emotional connection to that knowledge at all. And that's what's missing is you can give him all the knowledge in the world, but if it doesn't resonate with you, it's just information. It makes sense.
And look, and
that's a good dynamic. That's a good.
And Beacon, look, and how that plays out with us when we're talking to our allies, because a lot of times a white ally is somebody who understands systemic racism and that there is an imbalance on an intellectual level.
Right.
But the minute they feel as if you're not patting them on the back for getting it right, there's a disconnect, and they'll quickly say, you know what? I'm not. Well, I was helping out, but now you pissed me off, so I'm not helping out anymore.
Right.
Yeah.
Right. That you never gave a fuck in the beginning.
You really didn't. Because that means you weren't fighting to change the problem. You were fighting to get accolades from me. And the problem isn't that I don't appreciate you. The problem is white supremacy. So there's something to fight, whether I appreciate you or not. So they couldn't have been. It couldn't have been the right reasons.
They had an intellectual understanding of white supremacy and the problem, but they didn't have an emotional
not an emotional conviction.
However, I think that this new ally that I've experienced, and I've had a couple of conversations with him, it's a difference between the ally that puts a black box on Instagram and puts Black Lives Matter beside it, and posts, and that's support. And to now to have these angry allies that I've experienced, to where they're so angry and they're so passionate that they will want to stand beside you and fight along with you.
No. They're not standing beside you. Like they standing in front of you. Like
in front, some of them. Yeah, I mean, but that's what I'm saying, and that's what I'm noticing. That seems to be a very different, again, the texture of this new ally.
Yeah.
You know, this emboldened and passionate and angry.
Right.
You know, it is. I said, oh, okay, this is a different. It feels different.
Yeah, because and what did that was the information that they have now, but they can't say they're making this up. There's no way for them to think that now because they see it. And they know,
but I
also white, that wouldn't have happened. They know that.
Right.
So
exactly.
many times they know if that guy was white, he wouldn't have got shot.
It wouldn't have happened. It just wouldn't have happened.
And when they have that realization, like, whoa, they really don't treat us the same. And I have people I love that are black, and they walk out the house and they feel like that could happen to them at any time because
anytime might not come back home.
And that's the thing like that. If we get stopped by the cops, we don't have the same experience that a white person has. Period. Just because of the color of our skin, we could be as affluent as we want to be. We still feel like a black person when we get stopped, or when we have any interaction with a cop.
It's not that we feel blue. It's not that we feel like a black person. When we get pulled over, they make sure we know that we are a black person. Yeah. Like I remember when I left for college. You know, my mom my dad once again ran down all the remember you black rules. You know what I'm saying? Like, hey, you know, and the fact that you start getting taught the black rules, hey, that you're a black person at like 6 or 7 years old, you know what I mean? Yes, it definitely gives us a different lens that we view life.
Yeah.
But then when you actually start experiencing it, like one of the things that I've seen going around the internet is people have been asking, how old were you the first time a cop pulled a gun on you, right? For me, I was 18 years old. The very first time a cop ever pulled a gun on me, right? But I'm seeing people who are talking about, oh, I was 6 years old. I was 7 years old. Like, the amount of people that put up ages under 10 blew my mind. And I know that this is a real thing, and this happens. You know what I'm saying? Like, so we're conditioned to dislike the police. We're conditioned to fear the police, for lack of a better word. Because at the end of the day, at almost 40 years old, like if I get stopped, I fear no man. And that's not me trying to act tough or be hard, none of that. I don't fear no man. But when I get stopped by the cops, that hit different. Yeah. That's a whole nother experience. Like I told Brandon,
not you don't feel like you're dealing with a man. You feel like you're dealing with a whole system. Like you're dealing with a whole government.
And you are.
Every time one cop stops you.
For people is being out peacefully protesting, like white people trying to be out peacefully protesting and getting shot in the face with fucking rubber bullets and shit, like everybody else. You know what I'm saying? Like
everybody else.
It's just like, what the fuck? Like
yeah.
And what's crazy about that is the law with when you shoot a rubber bullet, you're not supposed to be aiming at the body or the face. You're actually supposed to shoot at the ground, so it bounces up. You know, and
the least you're supposed to do is shoot at a lower extremity. You can shoot at the legs or shoot at the ground and make called a ricochet. You're not supposed to be shooting these projectiles in people's faces or upper body. Period.
Upper body. Period.
And you can't tell me that they haven't been trained on this shit.
Oh,
you can't tell me they haven't been trained on this shit. They know exactly what they're doing when they point a gun at your face with a rubber bullet projectile and shoot you in the face. It's not an accident.
No.
It's not an accident.
This shit is knocking his eyes out, fucking cracking skulls, all types of crazy shit.
Yeah.
But you know that it is planned when the audio has leaked from New York and other places where the cops are talking to each other, talking about, yo, shoot them, run them over. Like, they know what they're doing.
Yeah.
They know what they're doing.
I mean, and black skin is weaponized. You know what I'm saying? Like even in the academy, and they're trained. Like it's a lot of that.
There's propaganda that they get subjected to the psychological stuff. So they'll have a training where they're supposed to de-escalate, right? Do all this stuff. They go through this however many hours of training for de-escalation. But then when you actually get into the department and your sergeant says to you, make sure you come home, that's a subliminal message to tell you, make sure you shoot me before I can have a possibility of shooting you. Mm-hmm. When I was a security guard, the training I was getting as a security guard doing armed security work was, if I touch my weapon and look at you in the face, it's considered assault because it's an intimidation factor. If I have to load my weapon in public, it's considered brandishing a gun. I go to jail. If I arrest you with and put the handcuffs on too tight and cause nerve damage in your wrist, the company says you're on your own. They're going to sue you. You have to handle that. We're basically screwed, right? Why is my standard as a security guard higher than the standard of police officers? Wow. Why when I was in the military did I have to wait? If the rule of engagement was if I'm in a war zone, a combat zone, literally if I was in Iraq, I was not allowed to shoot at an enemy combatant until they shot at me. I was literally not allowed to shoot until they started shooting, right? Why are cops allowed to shoot at civilians, a United States citizens, if they think you're even reaching towards a possible weapon? They don't have to see the weapon. You don't have to pull it out. You don't have to fire it. They get to shoot you if you move your hand. Why is that the rule of engagement for American citizens, while the rule of engagement for enemy combatants is something completely different? That's insane.
And I want to piggyback on that into the budget factor of our police budgets for like LAPD, 1.8 billion. New York is $6 billion. So they have tanks, they have military grade stuff, that you were just speaking about. They have all those things. Like why? And that's the question that Kamala Harris had brought up. I think yesterday she was speaking about why are we, addressing our citizens with military force, like just our police. I mean, because why do we need a $6 billion budget? $6 billion
when you got public schools,
you can't teach. Yeah, exactly. You can't
not just
pay
for the
teachers.
Public, for the health workers.
You can't pay teachers. You can't pay the school system public school system is waning, but you got $6 billion for the police.
So look, in Camden, there's an article out there that's circulating right now where they, Minneapolis is talking about I don't know, abolishing, or I don't know what the word is. They're going to dismantle the police force, right?
Defunding.
Defunding. They're literally going to take the police. They're going to get rid of the police force. They're going to take it apart. It's going to be gone. So defunding in the other places, they're talking about taking away the money for the guns and all that stuff, right? In Minneapolis, they're literally going to
dismantling it. Yeah.
They're going to dismantle the police force, and then they're going to rebuild it as a different iteration of police force. In Camden, New Jersey, where they have this crazy high crime rate, that's what they did.
Grew up there.
They kept trying to bring all of these cops in and military gear and all this stuff, and nothing was changing, right? It was more and more violent. So what they did was they dismantled the police force and they rebuilt them almost like a Peace Corps, to where the cops were like very community-based, very community-oriented. They knew everybody. They started getting to know people. They started putting more of the funding back into programs for like education and therapy and all these things. And it completely changed the nature of Camden.
Yeah, right? I heard about that as well.
So they're gonna do the same thing.
That's crazy me hearing that, because I lived in Camden as a child, so I know.
Yeah, 2018.
What kind of city you talking about?
2018, I think I did. And I'll matter of fact, I'm gonna send you the link to the article.
Yeah, I want to check that out.
And I mean, I'd like to, on this beautiful filter-free platform, I would like to acknowledge everyone who has protested, you know what I'm saying, on our behalf, on the behalf. Like, I think we probably should have started it off with that, because folks have been out there daily for the last 2 weeks, man. Like, and I can't say enough, man. I love it. I just would like to acknowledge and recognize that. Like, I have to say.
If we're going to do that, though, I definitely want to say, I definitely want to acknowledge Amber Sawyer, because like she been no James, no, like real talk. Amber has been going out of her way for the last 2 weeks. Brandon can co-sign that. Like, she started a group. She's been having the conversations and the dialogue that's necessary. You know what I mean? Like, she's been doing Zooms and had large numbers of people in her Zoom. Like, I gotta give credit where credit is due. Matter of fact, one of the conversations she had a gentleman by the name of Charles Rambo, who's running to be sheriff in Fulton County, I believe it is, in Georgia. And it was a lot of questions that we had, that I had, as far as the police were concerned, that he was very knowledgeable and able to answer. Because one of the things that you guys had mentioned was like the training that they get. I remember where you had to do a psychological test to even be able to qualify to be able to be a police officer. And he was like, because most people flunk out day one, because if you smoke weed or you do anything like that, you're instantly disqualified. They say so the amount of candidates that they actually have is way lower because most people are disqualified out the gate. So now you're left over with whatever you get. So they no longer do the psychological exam in Georgia. He then went on to say is if someone has an issue and they have to go see the shrink uh that the police force provides, that unfortunately they can't even be like, you know what? Well, James is a racist. He probably shouldn't be on the force, right? They can't do that. All they can do is recommend a course of action, and then they let the supervisor know the course of action for the part that they actually have to do. But there's no
So the course
information.
of action can't be he needs to be removed.
No, it'll be like, oh, James is a racist. We're gonna put him through "Don't Be a Racist" courses. We're gonna try to see if we can de-racify James.
James
Like,
got
and
a
that's the way.
father and a grandfather that put him through much more powerful
Come
racist
on.
courses.
Come on.
I mean, that's exactly.
And another aspect, since we went through the racism thing, and my dad and my grandfather, it just popped in my head that I think we maybe should speak about, if anybody has anything to add to it, is that my dad told me that my grandfather was paying taxes for schools he couldn't go to,
Right.
for pools he couldn't swim in, for hospitals he couldn't take his sister. Like my
cops that
so
would
that's
kill him.
that level of plunder that existed, like and that's when you talk about systemic racism.
Yeah.
Like you imagine all the black folks that were paying taxes in a state for them to libraries that my dad couldn't go into. My grandparents were paying for the state for that stuff. That's plunder, and that's a whole nother part. The financial fiscal fatigue of racism and how it impacts our communities.
I mean, let's take it a step further. I mean, we should not been in a fighting war, James. You know what I'm saying? They fought in the Vietnam War and they came back and still weren't respected. Still had to deal with racism. Still got mistreated. So, like, you know what I mean? Unfortunately, this is a system, and I'm glad that we having a conversation. I'm so thankful that you brothers took the time this evening to come together so we can discuss this. Because it's definitely something that is necessary. We all come from different backgrounds, from all different parts of the country. You know what I'm saying? But the one thing that we do have in common is that we black. We can identify with each other. You know what I'm saying? We black. We bliggity black. You know what I'm saying? And unfortunately, not unfortunately, I'm proud to be black. Yo, I love.
Wouldn't have it any other way.
I wouldn't want to be
Like,
nothing
I
else.
wouldn't want it no other way. I do say, yo, I'm glad that God put me in this time period because I don't know if I would have made it in any other time. You know what I mean? But like, yo, listen, like you got a generation that grew up on Nuck If You Buck, that fight music in the club, and then they had kids, and you seeing their kids. Those are the foot soldiers. Those are the ones that these protests with the energy and ready to go. You know what I'm saying? So we gotta look at it and find a way that we can constructively train our children. So if they're going to do this, that they're actually prepared for battle.
So
you know
let me go ahead. I'm gonna go beacon on y'all real quick. I'm gonna beacon y'all real quick. So
all right,
another Bible reference is that a lot of people say, after that, what Beacon was talking about, that Egyptian slave experience, and God decided to take them out of it. When he took them out of it, it was about, I don't know, like a 2-week journey to where they were going if they had gone straight, right? But God led them around in circles for 40 years. with fire by night and a pillar of cloud by day, because the people that came out of Egypt into the wilderness are not the people that came out of the wilderness into Canaan. That was the next generation. The people that came into the wilderness died in the wilderness. It was the next generation that went into Canaan. Matter of fact, not even Moses went into Canaan. Moses was a member of that generation that did not go to Canaan. He died before Canaan. Joshua went into Canaan. So just like at the end of that slavery, there's a couple generations before they went into the promised land, and it wasn't the people that came out of slavery that went into the promised land. There were too many the people that came out of slavery were crying about the flesh pots of Egypt. They were discounting all the miracles that they were seeing day by day, and they missed Egypt. They were conditioned to the point where there were things about their oppressor that they genuinely missed. Right? This is how ingrained into the Egyptian culture they were. But the people that had the vantage point of being born in the wilderness could start with a clean slate and could learn a new way from the beginning. Those are the people that went into the promised land. So right now, we have about 2 generations from civil rights and all the stuff we had to go within. And we have a new generation of black people, and we have a new generation of white people. And the new generation of white people is a lot different than the new generation the white people used to be in those days. The people
Generation Z.
The people they were fighting are a little bit different than the people that we're dealing with today, and that's clear, especially right now. That's clear. Right. We got a whole different breed of white people now.
They love black people, yo. They genuinely love black folks now. You know what I'm saying? And
I wouldn't go that far.
They do. They do.
I think
they do.
They do. We got some white people that are really like on board right now, and
like
we
look
and
at
they
the
feel
amount of interracial couples.
Yeah, we
you know
got
what I'm
more
saying?
of that
Look
too.
at the amount of interracial couples.
We got more of that.
It's a different climate.
That's the real fear.
It's a different climate because generations were allowed to pass.
Yeah.
So we have a different type of fight than they had, and we have a different type of ally than they had. Because, of course, Harriet Tubman couldn't have done what she did without white allies. So we've always had white allies.
Right.
But it was a different type of ally and a different level of ally that we have today. So I think the beauty of this, what we have right now.
And to put things in perspective.
What do you say?
What do you say?
To put things in perspective also is like this COVID-19 thing is also taking out a whole other generation. It's disproportionately affecting a specific demographic, which are like older people. It's also clearing out like the remnants of that generation.
Yeah.
It's taking out a lot of them.
But see, as I was saying, like that's their fear. Like they're not afraid that we're gonna take up arms. They're terrified because they're like, yo, it's too much intermixing. You know what I'm saying? You got a whole bunch of mixed babies. As somebody said
because
earlier,
that threatens their race in a real way. Like it
exactly.
Really does.
Because now we're getting back to the original.
And it doesn't threaten us that way, so we don't really think about that, and we don't really relate to that. Just the way they don't relate to racism, we don't relate to the fact that we can't be eradicated, and they can.
Yeah.
So we got to be sensitive to that. Not meaning, we can't date white people because you feel that way, but I'm just saying I'm sensitive to the fact that you feel that way, but the way that but hating us isn't gonna fix it. It isn't gonna help anything.
I remember an article that came out. It's been a few years now, but maybe about like 4 or 5 or 6 years, something like that. But there was an article saying something to the effect of like by 2050, so only 30 years away, the majority of the population would be like mixed complexion, coarse hair. So changes are definitely happening.
Right, but that
biological level too.
But you can imagine how hard it is for somebody who was one of the good old boys to see that
to watch it fade away.
It's like you're watching yourself fade into oblivion.
Right.
That's something.
But and that's why we're also seeing the huge influx with the KKK. We see them in Alabama. Yeah. They burning crosses. We see them in the white boy. There's a KKK leader in Virginia that ran his car into a crowd of protesters, a Black Lives Matter. Like, we're gonna see them resist in the way they traditionally have historically, which is violent.
Yeah.
So that part as well. It's a large.
You know, they still have a contingent. And they're always going to have a contingent because a lot of those people, what that guy was doing by killing Ahmad was he saw a teachable moment and he used it to teach his son. That's what he was doing.
Mm-hmm.
It was a pastime.
He wasn't just killing a black person. He was saying, son, this is what you do when you see a black person on your street.
Yeah.
He was saying, this is how you handle it. This is a moment that I have the opportunity to bless you with this instruction.
Yeah. Let's do it together.
That was an outing. That was a family outing. It was
pastime.
Killing a black person.
Yeah.
So they are very diligent in passing down the things that they do. They might be a little bit more diligent and a little bit more ferocious about it in the South because of the nature of the South. But it wasn't just the South because we were here to do. We were slaves in the South, but we were working in the North too.
Yep.
We were just slaves in the South.
Right.
So we were doing the cotton in the South. We were doing the textiles in the North. So we didn't. It's not that no black people were in the North. We just had a little bit of a different experience in the North than we had in the South. So, and the economics of that creating a problem for the North and South is why we were emancipated in the first place. It had nothing to do with loving us.
Slavery.
Right?
And also, to add on, Georgia does not have a hate crime statute. There are four states in the union that do not have hate crime statutes. So that's another thing. This case is doing what it's going to do, but the fact that it doesn't have a hate crime statute is going to be interesting in the outcome.
So, fellas, just want to bring something to you guys' attention real quick. We have crossed the 2-hour mark of this conversation. I did see that Waz said he's got to get ready to bounce in a moment. Gentlemen, I appreciate you guys for taking the time this evening to join us so we could have this conversation. This is only the first of many conversations that we will be having. As long as we're dealing with this, we will be talking. So whether it's all the entire cast, all 5 of us, or if it's 1, 2, or 3 of us, you will be seeing us and we will be talking. If you have anything to say, any comments, please make your voices heard. If you disagree, have input, please make it heard. But you guys from Filter Free, we love you all. We thank you. If y'all need to talk, hey, y'all can hit up any one of the fellas. Y'all know the names. Y'all have all of our information. Please reach out. I do want to say I thank all of our allies and everybody that's fighting with us. We need you. Please don't stop. I appreciate you. You know what? This has been Filter Free. Y'all have a great night. We appreciate it. God bless.
Have a great night.
Deuces.
Later on.